Hello, and welcome to Global Data Themes Instant Insights. At Global Data, we define a theme as something that keeps a CEO awake at night, as businesses that invest in important themes will succeed, and those that don't will fail. Hello, and welcome to Instant Insights. I'm Emma Taylor, and today I'll be talking to René Morkos, CEO of Alice Technologies and adjunct professor at Stanford University. Today we'll be focusing on AI applications in the construction industry. So, what do you see as the main applications of AI in the construction industry over the coming years, the next few years?
It's a good question. I think I always say define artificial and define intelligence.
Right.
I think people sort of really put AI on so many things. The field of artificial intelligence is very, very broad. Artificial intelligence, lately, somebody I read a paper that is defined as whatever wasn't done thus far. The latest version of AI is large language models.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are the algorithms needed for generative AI, like ChatGPT and things like that.
like very powerful, beautiful technology. I do actually think that's going to change things. My prediction, and we'll see if I'm correct, is that I don't think that it will replace humans entirely. So I think that it's going to do a lot of the heavy duty lifting, but you still sort of need the human to tell it what to lift and interpret the results. And we see this pattern over and over again. The human tends to do a piece of work, and then what the AI does is it does some of the crunching. And what the human's role becomes is set up what needs to be crunched and interpret the results. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that moving forward.
Right, yeah. So the human working in conjunction with the AI. And what about more sort of industry specific applications?
Things that I think that are like low-hanging fruit in our field. Here's a few examples that come to mind. Sifting through 600 pages of specifications. Why would you want to do that? And you could ask the system, hey, give me um, the information that pertains to X or Y or Z. I think what we're seeing is the ability to create 3D models automatically. So you'll sort of see that. We've been experimenting with sort of using LLMs to generate schedules. And there's things that it can, do and things that it can't do. I think, for example, that you'll be able to use AI to sift through your company's database to tell you like your average production rates for a given
Mm.
task.
So it's more about sort of increasing productivity rather than replacing anybody.
The question I like to ask my students is, you know, you can mine Amazon serve for 3 cents. So if you're going to base your career on crunching, like a lot of prior careers were, then I hope you're satisfied with a salary of 3 cents an hour.
Mm.
However, you are the entity that's doing the crunching, then you're going to have a long and lucrative career. So the question that you want to ask yourself is how many machines do you control? And that's a fascinating thought because when you start thinking about it, like what's really dramatically changed in our world, and this trend has been ongoing for 20 years, is the cost of compute is getting lower and lower and lower and lower. The cost per $1,000, what $1,000 can get you is insane. Computers have been doubling in speed every roughly 18 months for 50 years. What's happening as a result is that the access that you have to computing power, and now with cloud computing, like right today, like your computer is almost like a portal.
Mm.
All applications are web-based, and you're sort of reaching out to a server somewhere that's crunching it for you. And so as you start building, the cost of software is getting exponentially lower. So I actually think it's just an unparalleled opportunity. I actually think that the general contractor of the future is going to be successful based on how quickly they can identify, evaluate, and integrate new technologies.
What do you think people should be wary of? Like, where do you think the risks lie?
Absolutely. I mean, it's why I said identify, evaluate. What's happening suddenly, right, is that you've got this explosion of technologies. And so it's no longer a question of like should we try it or not? It's what do we try?
Mm, yeah.
And the companies were talking when I started this in 2015, construction companies were like, you do like what? Like wait, you bring in AI to construction, like that's kind of nuts. Today they're suffering from like startup fatigue.
Mm.
The other thing that's really interesting is that one of the questions I asked myself is why do startups exist? And I thought about this, and like everybody tells you like, oh, because we work harder and we're smarter, and the one thing you learn at a place like Stanford is like you're not smarter, And so I sort of thought to myself, like these companies, like some of the companies we talk to are not in the tens of billions of dollars. So like, why does a company like Alice exist? And the answer is simple. It's that startups are effectively the outsourced research and development arms of these large companies. It's almost like these large companies said R&D is really expensive and hard and difficult, it doesn't work. So why don't we outsource it? Why don't we create, why don't we have 1,000 startups all trying and failing? And when one of them starts working, we'll just use that tech or we'll buy it. You watch this trend, which is crazy. Like 2015, I'm telling you, there was like probably 2, 3 companies in the US that had like someone thinking about innovation. 7 years later, probably in our 400, I would tell you that 50% of them have some sort of a innovation framework, innovation person, leader who is responsible for exactly this, figuring out what it is that we're doing. And that's a really, interesting, beautiful, strategic question because what you're thinking about is, hey, what does my company want to achieve? What do we need to do? Where are we headed? Right? What do I think my actual advantage is, over my competition? And how is technology going to help me better hone that advantage? And how is it going to help me better maintain it?
How much do these like sort of bigger companies work in conjunction with startups, like Alice? Like surely it would be beneficial for them to work quite closely with them, in terms of like data and just creating a product that suits them.
Um, when we started in 2015, there was a lot of like I don't know if fear is the right word, but a little bit of distrust.
Right.
Like we think about data, what are you going to do with it, etc. Right? And I think this is now 7 years on, and the sort of construction, as I call it, the Renaissance, right, happened in 2017. That's when it flipped. Right. Construction went from being the ugly duckling nobody wanted to touch to suddenly, hey, this is the sexiest thing in the world. It's going to be the next industry to get,
And
changed.
why was that?
I thought about this. I think there's several reasons. One, what we have really needed in construction is the input to construction to get digitized. And the input to construction is the design. And the design, truthfully, the technology for digitizing the design has existed since the 80s. Object-oriented and parametric. So in our field, we call object-oriented parametric technology BIM, building information modeling. That's fundamentally what it is. BIM is parametric and object-oriented. And so the problem wasn't that the technology didn't exist. The processors weren't fast enough to crunch buildings. Models of construction buildings or construction projects are larger, more complicated than models of engines. And so BIM wasn't really usable. People would come and like, how big is the model? Is it 20 megabytes? It's 3 stories. It's 100 megabytes. Like, how big is this 3D model, object-oriented parametric representation of what we're building? That started to change in 2015. The machines caught up. And they were starting to crunch they were able to start crunching things this large. So that's one factor. Another factor was introduction of cloud computing, which meant that you suddenly had access to a lot more data. And for our field, especially because we're so fragmented, there's so many different parties, so many different people, right? I think that was important. Another aspect of cloud computing is that you had access to this large amount of compute power. Construction is the second least digitized industry, not because we are lazy, lazier and dumber than other fields. We're the last to get digitized because inherently the stuff that we're working on is way harder to digitize than other stuff. That's why we've been solving manually because the computers weren't able to crunch it. Now you've got access to the cloud. Now you've got access to, an hour on the Amazon EC2 server is 3 cents.
Yeah. Would you also say like one of perhaps the reasons that that it took a bit longer as well is that, the stakes are high in construction.
I totally agree. We're in an industry that's similar to healthcare
Mm,
in the way that it adopts innovation. Why? Well, in healthcare, if you screw up, someone dies. In construction, not only if you screw up, someone dies, but you have a 3% profit margin.
yeah.
Think about that. You're a project manager for a $100 million job. You have $3 million that's your basically I effed it up budget. Anything that happens on that construction site, if you mess up more than 3%, and you're in a business where you are managing large amounts of capital, labor equipment and machinery, right? Other materials. It's a highly complex operation that has very razor thin margin for error. So yeah, I do agree with you.
Mm. And is there anywhere you can think of within the construction process life cycle that you can see will continue to have to stay like done by humans? Like, can you see anywhere where AI will not be appropriate?
If I had the answer to that question right, I mean, the one thing that you sort of realize when you come to Silicon Valley is like, trust me, there's no conspiracy or master plan. There's
Mm.
just a lot of very smart people working, 24/7 on ideas. And so like, which aspect of this experience will humans be safe from? I could tell you that in my opinion, I don't think any job will not be like changed by AI.
Fair.
Here's the good news. Um, and this is sort of a deep, dark secret, but this was actually even discussed at our faculty in the sense that there are a lot of really boring jobs in construction. And I really think that AI enables those jobs to be a lot less boring.
Right, because
Um,
you get to focus on the more creative aspects or whatever, and yeah, take away the monotonous, like the example you mentioned, like sifting through hundreds of specs and things.
yeah. I think one of the things that's interesting is that like here's a call it an old school example, right? But when you look at SAP 2000 structural analysis program, you know, did it put structural engineers out of business? No. The truth is that at the end of the day, you still need a structural engineer to sign off that this building isn't going to fall over.
Mm.
One of the things that's interesting about neural networks, which LLMs are based on, but one of the things that's interesting about neural nets is that they have two very interesting, they have a very, very, very powerful upside, but they have two very powerful downsides. And most people don't realize that. And so the thing that's really, really powerful about a neural net is that you don't need to explain to it how to solve the problem. Google had an algorithm that they set loose on the internet, and the darn thing came back and figured out what cats look like. And I remember going like, wow, this like blew my mind, right? I was just like, that's kind of crazy. Because think about like try to explain what makes a cat a cat. Like, well, it's got whiskers, but so also lions and tigers and lots of other animals. Well, yeah, but it's got
Mm.
a tail. Like, it's a really kind of devilishly difficult problem. But what neural nets enable you to do is to like load up 10,000 pictures of cats, and then the software starts to, it gets better and better and better. And at some point, it becomes really darn good.
Well,
But
I guess by dictating the rules of what defines a cat, you could actually like limit its
yes,
potential completely.
yes, yeah, absolutely. But here's the downside. Ask a neural net, okay, explain to me what makes a cat a cat. You know what you'll get? You'll get a bunch of numbers between 0 and 1 for the various parameters in the neural net.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Well, it doesn't
But
understand the environment, right?
literally, that's how it works. Like it is completely incapable of explaining to you how it did it because it's like, well, how I did it is I've got a network of neurons, and each of those neurons has a value between 0 to 1. That's an easy way to sort of visualize it for the listeners who are not familiar with neural nets. But That's basically it. So that's the one downside is you can't explain it. The
Mm.
other, I think, major downside is that they're never 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Now you even see that with GPT-4.
Mm.
It it's great and 90 and with visual stuff, right? You'll get a 98% accuracy. Yeah, that's like considered absolutely world class. Usually it's 80, 85, 90, something like that. You know. But here's the question to you. If you are designing a building, right? Are you happy that it's 98% of the time not going to fall over?
No, no. I would expect my house to not fall over 100% of the time.
Yes. Now, the thing with what we've developed at Alice is you have an underlying constraint model. You can go in and tweak it, right? That you can definitely tweak something that GPT created, but you don't have access to the underlying mechanism of how it was created, if that makes sense.
Mm. And do you think that's just an underlying limitation of like large language models, or do you think that that is something that could be rectified?
I actually think that is an underlying limitations of LLMs. I don't believe that you'll be able to fix that. That it's just how they work.
Mm.
Like the upside is that you get this incredibly powerful technology that does all these magical mystical things. I still think that you still want a human to check it.
Well,
Like
that's the
what
thing. And like if you have to get the human to check every single calculation that model is then done, then like is that really saving much time?
I don't know if you have to get it. Like here's the deal, right? If you're using structural analysis program, right, which is an old school example, but you still get to check. There's faster ways to do it.
Right.
So like if it gives you the first draft, right, it should be easier for you to go and create the second draft.
Mm.
If it created something and this is the part where I don't have a crystal ball, but what I'm telling you is stuff that I've sort of picked up on in Silicon Valley and looking at all these technologies, I've been in the Valley since 2009. So those are two, three sort of aspects of this technology, right? Which is one, really powerful. You don't have to explain to it how to do it. But the downside is it can't explain to you how it did it.
Mm.
And it's not 100% accurate. And so when you're thinking of writing an essay, who gives a shit, right? Okay, made some mistakes, you just correct them and move on. But in certain cases, you actually care very deeply whether it's made some mistakes, and you care very deeply about understanding how how it created what it created.
Yeah, for sure. And is Alice Technologies using any generative AI products or looking into any generative AI products, or do you think other AI applications are more appropriate for?
Oh no, we're actually definitely using it. We've done several things. I mean, the low-hanging fruit was we got it to read our user manual, and it's actually pretty darn good at answering questions on how to use it.
Oh,
Um,
nice. I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the best thing about it, right? Like summarizing fed content. That's
Yep.
where it excels.
And I personally think that there's going to be a big application for it in terms of setting up some of the input that you need, in the sense of reading, um, you know, give me the production rates for pouring concrete for this location, right?
Right.
Um, I think that you can do various things like that with it.
Yeah. I guess it's just about knowing which applications it is best suited to and having, the expertise to integrate it appropriately. But amazing. Well, thank you so much, Renee. I think that's all we've got time for. But thanks for coming to talk to me today. Thank you for listening. And from us in Thematic Intelligence, we will see you next time.